Today on the Next, our guest is Jordan Fliegel, co-founder and CEO of Shareholder Ventures. Now, I've known Jordan a long time, and I was particularly excited for this one. Jordan grew up as a basketball player. He played in college and then played professional basketball in Europe before his business career. Then he founded a sports company called CoachUp, one of the leaders in sports coaching with more than 3,000 active coaches conducting lessons every month across the country. He founded another sports startup, fantasy sports, a company called Draft that was acquired by Paddy Power Betfair for $48 million. And then he spent the last several years at Techstars, where he ran their sports accelerator and ultimately their New York City accelerator as well. And he left recently to co-found Shareholder Ventures, which is a holding company backed by 85 experienced founders and operators that helps acquisition entrepreneurs acquire SMBs from retiring owners by providing capital, back office support, resources, and community to enable the successful silver tsunami, if you will, transition of 500K plus profitable SMBs by 2040. Now, we had a lot to talk about in this one, including what's happening in youth sports and Jordan's perspective on sports in general, growing up as an athlete and then being a sports tech entrepreneur and investor for so long. We also talk about what categories within sports tech are interesting to him and where he's made bets and where the fruit's been ripe and where maybe not so much. And we talk about Jordan's transition from founder to investor and now to this new model with Shareholder Ventures, where it's less about venture-backed startups and more about these small, profitable businesses in unsexy areas, and how those are kind of hidden opportunities for entrepreneurs that want to build a different way. And Shareholder Ventures is also building a different way in terms of this HoldCo that's backing these companies and also putting some of them on the balance sheet directly as well. At any rate, I learned a lot in this one, and I hope you do as well. But before we get started, I'm Jason Jacobs, and this is The Next. It's not really a show, it's more of a learning journey to explore how founders can build ambitious companies while being present for family and not compromising flexibility and control, and also how emerging AI tools can assist with that. Each week, we bring on guests who are at the tip of the spear on redefining how ambitious companies get built, and selfishly, the goal is for this to help me better understand how to do that myself, while bringing all of you along for the ride. Not sure where this is going to go, but it's going to be fun. All right, Jordan Fliegel, welcome to the show.
Jason, good to be here.
Now, I remember I started Runkeeper around 2008, and there was this crazy little rabid chihuahua who was running around town, Jeremy Levine, trying to do whatever, and I used to see him at events, and there would be this really tall sidekick who was always glued to his side. I never knew. It took me a little while to figure out that was you.
That was me.
Yeah, that's how I first met you back in the day, and
I'm
look at us now. We're all grown up.
I'm glad I made such a memorable impression on you.
Well, you were. I actually didn't. I knew you were a basketball player, but in prep for this discussion, I was looking a little bit into your background, and you were kind of a Division III hero.
Yeah, like a jumbo shrimp.
Like you were captain of the best team in Bowdoin history, MVP. It was league, state, maybe some All-American mixed in there, like that.
Yeah.
And then you built a sports startup around coaching, different sports, right? And then I don't know the exact timing, but I think you might have got out of that around the same time I got out of Runkeeper. And unlike me, I swore off sports tech at that point. I was completely done with it. You went even deeper for the last many years, right? And then just as I'm now gearing up to go back in, you're running for the hills. And now you don't want anything to do with it. Because I tried, I'm like, how about this idea? You're like, bleh. You've got so much PTSD. You're the worst person to talk to about sports tech now. Even though you know the most, it's too much. Yeah, you're ruined. You're ruined on sports tech.
true of anything. You ask like a restaurateur, like, hey, and they're gonna be like, stay out of restaurants, food, never, no, oh, everything sucks, staff, food, chefs, landlords, it's all hard, it's all bad.
Well,
So uh,
everything looks better from a distance, I think.
yeah,
You
when
know,
you're in it, you see it.
I've been
Everything's
away.
hard. What's easy? Nothing's easy. Everything's hard. If you have passion for something, you got good people around you, you know, you're crazy enough to try, go for it. I mean, you're in a different, but you've done it before, and you've done it in sports before, so it's a different thing. But it's a sexy space, and people out of, everyone plays, not everyone, a lot of people play sports as a kid or in high school or college or whatever, and you get ideas often for your first company based on your experience that you've had, right? Like your personal lived experience. That's how I started Coach Up. I don't know. I imagine your Runkeeper story. I never quite heard, I think, the origin, but I imagine it had to do with you running and wanting to run better or something like that, right?
Oh, it had to do with uh like growing up. It was like sports and partying were my passions, not school. And then I thought business was just where you go to die when like you put on your
Yeah,
trench coat and briefcase and
yeah,
like life will never be in color again. It'll only be in
yeah,
black and white till you die, right?
yeah.
And I uncovered while I was in school tech and startups and was like, oh wow, like business can actually be sport
Right.
and like poured myself into tech startups. But then when I was doing that, I never worked in an area I cared about the widget. And I was like, well, I'm not a technologist, so I like none of these widgets mean anything to me. And then I want to start a company, and I thought the widget didn't matter. And then I was driving myself crazy trying to figure out what to build, and because I didn't know what I was passionate about, and I didn't think passion mattered. And I was like, I'm driving myself crazy. I need to clear my head. Trained for my first marathon, and then during that, I was like, oh wait, like, well, one, I have an idea like at this intersection, but two, like fitness. Like I'm so passionate about fitness. I'm going to build a fitness technology company, right? Which is really similar now to how I got into potentially doing something in youth sports here. It's like, all right, like how to build different, and then how AI can help. It's like, yeah, but I need to know about the category, and it's like, well, wait, like youth sports is where I'm spending like it's like the thing. It's the reason I need to work different is because of youth sports. So like,
We are
why don't I just
sports.
do something in youth sports? I know it well.
You're,
So
you're,
yeah.
and you're a sports dad now, so you have the that perspective, which is where the dollars are being controlled by mom and dad, and so that's a very valuable perspective. When I started Coach Up, I just had the basketball and the coach perspective, not the parent perspective for us. So I think that gives you an edge. And youth sports, Jason, on behalf of youth sports, we welcome you into the industry.
You can't say
And
we. No, you can't. I
no,
don't know if you
we
can say
do.
we.
I am a proud youth sports person, and we need more talented entrepreneurial ambition, drive, know-how, and so on in the space. And so we welcome you.
Well, I want to get into the professional stuff, but before we do, I'm just curious. I mean, you played very competitive athletics growing up. I know you. I mean, you don't have kids yet, correct?
Not that I know of.
Okay, so no kids yet, but I'm just curious, like sitting where you sit at, and observing. You're working in sports tech since the beginning of time and playing sports growing up. What's your take on the state of youth sports today?
State of youth sports today is competitive, pay to play, lucrative. If you're a top athlete, not just that you can get a college scholarship, but of course with NIL and so on, the path to not just getting a free ride, but actually making money before you even turn pro. That was never a thing. It's now a real, very real thing. Uh, the whole narrative around too much specialization in one sport, and sports should be fun, and kids should just be playing, and they shouldn't be like blah blah blah. It shouldn't be so serious and all that sort of stuff. So, I see there's I think two sides to that argument, but I certainly understand when parents come out for that, and I think that is only sort of growing. In order to really be competitive, you have to be like serious about it now, because it's the prizes for being a good athlete now in terms of college and financially and otherwise are there. Um, there's more knowledge than ever about how to train, how to eat, how to improve. And kids still suck at sports. So it's it's one of these things where there's just so much out there, but I think there's a lot of misinformation and I think just what are we trying to do and the goal and most kids it's just be fun, just play as long as you can, they shouldn't be in this sort of AAU and skill development, all this sort of stuff. Because it's never going to be a payoff, and it's not even that fun for them if you're not good at it or don't have potential. There's a lot of lies in youth sports. From a business perspective, you're selling the dream that junior can play in college or play pro or whatever. Junior can't, very rarely, And so, but if you actually have a kid who has like real potential, and it's usually pretty easy to actually figure that out if you're honest with yourself, or kids honest with themselves, then go for it. I don't know what's changed. NIL has changed a lot. If we're going to label things, NIL is probably the biggest thing. And just so much more knowledge about strength training and explosiveness and nutrition and all that sort of stuff than when I was coming up, for sure.
And I'm also curious. I mean, you grew up professionally as a founder, and then you spent the last many years at Techstars.
On the dark
which,
side.
Yeah, which is hard to put in a box. What you do, running. Because I think you ran two of the accelerators at once, right? So I'd imagine it was very busy, but it's hard to put like that's not a typical function that you can kind of describe. And now you're moving towards I think becoming more of a pure investor, but in a different kind of way than many of the tech people and Techstars people and all that are used to. But what do you think has driven each of these changes, and where do you sit today just in terms of how you want to work and where work fits into your portfolio of life?
As an entrepreneur, you need really three things. You need an idea. Doesn't have to be your own. Ideas come from anywhere. You need talented people, and you need capital. And kind of the way I think about entrepreneurship is sort of you're putting those three things together: an idea, people to pull it off, with money to support them, because obviously it's rare that it's profitable from the jump. And then the whole spiel about a CEO. Your job is to attain the mission and hire and motivate a great team and ensure you never run out of money, so you keep paying that team. A few sort of game-changing things on the side, business development or PR or whatever. But so that's what it is to be a CEO and to be an entrepreneur. On the idea part, I know the first couple of businesses I did were in sports. The first one was my idea. The second one was not my idea. But I've had ideas outside.
Wait, you're talking about draft?
Yeah, sorry. So coach up my idea, personal experience. I think oftentimes for an entrepreneur in your first business, you are taking market risk. Whereas a second or third time founder, once you know hopefully a little bit more about what you're doing, you're taking more execution risk. And so, for me with Coach, it was like there was no marketplace for kids and coaches. There was Uber and there was Airbnb. There's other marketplaces, Care.com and whatever, for nannies and Ubers and places to stay. But there wasn't, actually, Ubers for rides. Funny, become a verb. But there wasn't for how do you find a great, coach to get better at sports. And so I created that. So I was taking market risk, like, will this work? Hasn't been done before. And, but I think once you sort of know a little bit more, it's easier to go after something where you're like, oh, this is working. And it just, we can out execute or compete, or there's room in the space for multiple winners. And, the Lyft to Uber or the VRBO to Airbnb. And I'm not sure quite the timing on who came first and all that sort of thing, but there's room for multiple players, right? So anyway, what I'm doing, I moved from coach up to draft. Draft was Daily Fantasy Sports. My co-CEO and great friend Jeremy Levine, who you mentioned earlier, was the founder of the business.
And that was my first angel check, and then it exited and returned a good return in like 3 months or something. And I thought that that's the way it always works.
That's
I
how it
didn't know
works.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And by the way, that's the nice thing. When you make people money, then it becomes easier to do, people want to give you more money. That's life. That's life. You do well in high school, you get to go to college. You do well in college. That becomes a trap where if you do well in college and you go to like law school or something, and then you're screwed forever. In debt and whatever, and then you like get the good job and you work at the good job and then golden handcuffs and you never actually do what you want to do. Not to say maybe you want to be a lawyer, but yeah, but with entrepreneurship, yeah, like it was so hard for Coach Up. I raised $50,000 was my first round, $50,000 at a 1 million valuation. It took me at least it took me 6 months to get a technical co-founder, and it took me another 3 months to raise 50 grand. Like it was like 9 months to like get someone who could like actually code, my buddy Arian, like to like do it with me, and then to raise like that was 9 months, and now that's like, that's like 30 minutes or something, right? So it's like become faster, What were we
And then,
talking about though?
we
You
were
asked
talking
me.
about, yeah. So you were an entrepreneur a couple times, and then you made the decision to spend the last many years at Techstars. So what drove that decision, and maybe talk a bit about the work that you did there?
Yeah. Okay. So Coach Up was CEO. We raised $14 million, founder, CEO person. And then I moved we hired a professional, CEO. John came in. I moved to president, chairman role, whatever. They wanted me to hang around for a bit, but like, welcome, John. I don't know that I was great at hanging around. I hung around. It was a little awkward of a time. I lived across the street from the office, and I was like still there. And I would like, when the lights went on the office, I would walk into the office and I was like, but I didn't want to get in the way, but I was there and I want to do stuff. And I was 28 or whatever. Did that for a year and then went to do another startup, which was draft.com with my buddy Jeremy, who was the founder. When I joined, we pivoted the business, daily fantasy sports app. It was successful out because we raised like $6 million with the course of the business. We only raised 1 million more once I joined. Then we sold it pretty shortly thereafter for, you say $48 million, but some of that was earnout we didn't get, but it's a good outcome for everyone. And then I had to stay there, but I didn't want to stay very long. And so the day that I was allowed to leave, I left. Stayed, I think, a year and a half, my, handcuff phase. Would have maybe stayed longer. The CEO who bought our business, Breon Corcoran, global CEO, Paddy Power Betfair, which is now Flutter, it's the biggest sports betting operator in the world. Love the guy. He's a great friend and mentor. And he left. This is funny how life works. Had he stayed, he had like a midlife crisis or something. I don't know. He left and went on to run other massive companies and so on and so forth. Brilliant guy. And had he stayed, I probably would have I'd still be there because I felt like I could learn so much from him and I loved him, and I don't think I would have like wanted to leave. Regardless of what the business was, like even if I liked the business. By the way, it would have been very lucrative to have stayed as sports betting has rolled out across America. And we bought FanDuel, we merged the business together. It's now the largest sports betting operator in the world. Like maybe I should have stayed, but my heart wasn't in it, and I wanted to, I like to build things and do things, and so whatever. So I left. But it's funny how life works. Had he stayed, I probably would have stayed. So it was back-to-back startups. It was like Coach Up and then Draft, like back-to-back, no break. And by the way, Draft was super stressful. Like we were like barely making payroll. I think I slept in the office the first 6 months. I moved from Boston to New York, didn't even get an apartment, just like slept in the office, which was a little awkward when people showed up to work. I was like still on the couch, passed out, and funny. I remember funny anecdotes and memories about that. Like we were so tight sometimes on cash. I remember we had a kind of meeting with the team. There was 9 of us, and we actually weren't sure that we'd be able to make payroll in 2 weeks. And so we went to another startup. I won't say their name. I said, hey, we may be like not able to pay our people in 2 weeks, and they're gonna they have apartments and stuff, they rent, and like, can you take our team if we don't make the next payroll? Just like take them. They're great. It was a great team. And the CEO of that company, I won't name names, but he was like, yeah, sure, we'll take all the engineers, but not. We had one person in marketing. It's like not that person. And so I had a meeting with Jeremy. We said, okay, everyone, good news, bad news. Like we think we're gonna be able to raise money. We're leaving today for California. We're not gonna come back without money. But if we don't raise money, you all have jobs. at this other company, except for you. We're like, we got to go. We're at the airport. It's funny. The stress is crazy. You don't even realize when you're in it. Like I was like, well, I was sleeping in the office. We were trying to make payroll. Like, it was so hard, but we believed we had a vision for a pivot to a product that would work, and it did. But we had to get there, and it was hard. Anyway, back-to-back startups, and so the plan after we got out in January of 2019, me and Jeremy, my best friends, when we were little kids, and we finally like had a successful startup, and made money for the first real money for the first time, and so we had a one-way flight to Bali, and the plan was to just go and backpack around Asia and get bored and maybe come up with our next idea for another company, right? That was the plan. But I got a mortgage, and I got a girlfriend, and then my sister's dog bit her kid. I think it wasn't really the dog's fault, but whatever. And she had to get rid of the dog. She loved the dog. And so I ended up taking the dog. So I had a mortgage, a girlfriend, and a dog. And I said, Jeremy, I can't go to Bali. I can't go. And so I got out of Bali. And meanwhile, over the previous year, the folks at
Did
Techstars,
he go?
huh? Yeah, he went. The funny thing, he went. And then the Patriots were from Boston. The Patriots got a Super Bowl 3 days after a week after he got to Bali. So he flies from Bali to Atlanta to go to the Super Bowl and then back to Bali. He's a nut. By the way, he's crushing it as co-founder and CEO of Underdog.
I saw that.
Draft. They just raised
didn't
a $1.25 billion pre-money valuation.
Yeah.
5 years into the business, not even. Incredible entrepreneur, and a lot of our folks from Draft are now, we're sort of team at Underdog, and they've had great success with it. So that's what happened. He got bored in Asia, and he came up with that, and he launched. So maybe I should have done that one, but whatever. Unicorns, whatever. And they're great business. I mean, they're absolutely crushing it. And so anyway, the people at Techstars, I had put Coach up through Techstars Boston, and then Draft, back when it was Star Street, when Jeremy was first doing it, had gone through Techstars Boston. So we had this affinity for Techstars. I'd been a mentor at Techstars, and Techstars never had a sports accelerator. They had a music accelerator and so on. And this gets back to my point, and I know we're kind of going a winded way to get there, but one thing leads to the next and so on. Steve Jobs' famous speech, which says, you don't really know where your life's going. You can only connect the dots looking back, afterwards. If you haven't seen that, it's a good thing to look up. His speech is a great speech. And so I was in the Techstars power people mind, the Davids and Brad and so on. I guess I'm Mark Salone. I was the sports guy, as were you, right? There was a few of us who've done sports.
I didn't want to be you wanted to be. I was desperately trying to shed that. I was
but you want to be now. You're trying to, you wanted to get out. Now you're back in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're just on opposite paths. It would have been nice if things lined up to be on the same path at the same time, but
two ships crossed.
Anyways, so
they were like, oh, you've done, Coach Up, Sports Tech, Draft, Sports Tech, youth sports, fantasy sports, different, but sports. We want to launch a sports accelerator. And I was like, Techstars should totally have a sports accelerator. That's great. We should have always had one. And where should we do it? New York or LA or here or there? And I was like, I want to help you guys put this together. I had no intention of running it. So I was talking to people who maybe we should bring on to be the managing director, and who should fund it, and where should it be. And long story short, this group in Indianapolis, Next Level Fund, which is the state of Indiana's fund of fund, the Pacers, the Colts, the NCAA, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and IndyCar, all the sports properties in Indy, plus the state came and said, we want to be a sports tech town. We want to plant a flag in the ground. We want to have the best sports accelerator in the world here. And Techstars was great. And it was a great partnership. And then the folks at Techstars were like, by the way, do you want to run it? And I was like, no, I'm going to start another company with Jeremy. And I was kind of burned out, back-to-back startups. And I was like, this would be kind of interesting learning. I'm more on the investor side, and I get to have an impact on other founders and do more than just one thing and go a little shallower and broader. And so I was like, yeah, I'll do this for a year or two. And then that turned into 6 years because I just enjoyed it, and I just stayed.
So during that time, what does the GM of Techstars Accelerator do?
The first thing you should do is get a really great principal/program manager, whatever the title is, right hand person who's super strong operationally. I called my college roommate, Andrew Hippert. We played basketball together and great friends. I knew he'd be perfect for the role. And I said, he was living in DC at the time. And I remember saying, "Hey, Andrew, I want you to come do this thing with me, but I'm not going to tell you what it is or where it is." And he said, "Whose car are we taking?" And yeah, it's true. We're both from Massachusetts. So, and I was like, "Yeah, we're going to India." And he's like, "What?" So yeah, we would go out to, Indianapolis and we ran it together for 6 years. I mean, he made it so fun and so great. And all of our founders, gone through the program. Like, love Andrew. And he enabled me to be like the sort of philosophical investor type, role where I drop in and give my little spiel and my advice and hover out or try to make decisions on who we invest in and who they should raise money from and how to raise money and, CO advice stuff, whatever it was worth. And he was able to sort of really, really run the program. So that's really a good model for life. Get a great partner in whatever you do. And it makes everything. And we just had so much fun doing it. And then Jenny Fielding was a great investor, has her own fund, and has been running tech in New York for a long time. She left to grow up a fund, and so I was in New York City most of the year. And Techstars folks said, "Hey, do you also want to run Techstars New York City," which was category agnostic, not sports, but any other category. And so I ended up kind of running both for a while, and but ultimately got another idea, and that I like when you can't stop thinking about an idea for a long period of time, like you got to do something about it, and that's my new business. And so I left to do that. But I loved my time at Techstars. I love Techstars, all their founders. I'm seeing one today. I'm seeing another one tomorrow, and it expanded my network so much. All the founders, mentors, VCs I met through that. It was really great experience.
Looking back at, I'm interested in the sports tech one specifically. I mean, it seems like sports tech could be so wide or so narrow. How did you guys define sports tech? And with the benefit of hindsight, what were the areas that you think are investable and interesting? And then what are the ones that are like a bad SoCo night where it's like it seemed good at the time, but you're never going back?
Yeah. So the period in which I invested, 2019 through 2024, the period matters, and for a number of reasons I touch on. It wasn't my first time investing. I had a little angel fund with Jeremy called Founders First, and Syndicate. We deployed about $40 million over the last 12 years into startups, pre-seed, seed A. But with Techstars, I'm focusing on sports. So first we were doing a class. The year would vary. We'd do like 10 to 13 companies per year through sports, and then another 12 to 14 per year through New York. And so like with the most we did one year was 27 companies. The least we did in the first year was 10. So that would vary a little bit. But as an accelerator, when you're putting together an accelerator class, you're putting together a class. So you have 10 to 12 or 14 companies. And so you don't kind of want to have all, fan engagement companies because it's a little weird. They're all doing the same thing, and also it can be competitive and so on. And so you try to kind of assemble sort of a broad. When you think about sports, like a lot of people think it's small, but if you take the lens and approach that we did, it's actually quite large. If you think about all the subcategories in sports, you have, of course, youth sports, you have, fantasy sports and sports betting, you have sports media, you have fitness and wellness, nutrition, training, and so on. You have all these niche vertical things, which we did a lot of investing in, like, Fight Camp. I was an investor advisor before Techstars, but, boxing, right? And we did Ergata through the accelerator, which is for like Fight Camp, but for rowing. I'm oversimplifying it. And we did Flexia and Pilates. And so these like niche vertical grind, basketball shooting machine, Tennybot, robot that goes around, scoops up your tennis balls, brings it to the net, shoots it over, tracks light. So like the greatest innovation that's ever happened to tennis. So if you look at like individual, verticals, ticketing, made several ticketing investments. Project Admission was an early one in 2019. Collectibles got really hot during. You have to think about the period because during COVID, 2020, 2021, collectibles, NFTs, all that was like super, super hot because people were sitting around at home and interest rates were super low and people were just throwing money at sports cards and NFTs and whatever. And so we had made some investments in that space when it was hot and we were able to get those things funded. They have since not done as well, obviously, as the market has cooled. At-home fitness was super hot during COVID because people couldn't go to gyms. And so we made investments there and that went up. With the repeal of PASPA and the proliferation of sports betting, of course, sports betting, but also fantasy sports, which is tied to sports betting, and sports media properties go up in value because they have users become more valuable. anything related to fan engagement, selling into teams because teams monetize their fans better. And so all that sort of rising tide of sports betting unlocked a lot of value, not just in betting, but in ancillary categories. So invested there. So anyway, there's a lot of subcategories within wearables. Of course, everyone knows about like Whoop and, we did like Ganance, for instance, is a wearable company and other wearables. And so when you think about it like that, I mean, the only reason people go outside of their house is for fitness, sports, events, dating, food. You don't even really have to go. Like, what are the things that people spend money on, right? Outside of their phone and their subscriptions to Netflix and so on, right? And sports is a huge sports and fitness and wellness, right? Is a huge part of that trend. You see all these cold plunge and sauna stuff. We did an outdoor steam room company called Geyser Steam in the wellness. That was a little bit of a stretch when I sort of presented it, but cool product. I actually have one in my house in Florida. It's like great. Geyser Steam. But you see that here in New York City, we have like Othership and all these places where you can go, bathhouse and all this sort of stuff for, wellness. I would kind of put that in the recovery category with Normatec and, Theragun, right? That's a sports category. So if you look at it broad like that, it's a massive space with a lot of really big outcomes, Whoop and DraftKings. And, there are a bunch of large companies in the youth sports space, Teamworks and Sport Engine. And there's a bunch there you can look at too. Media Overtime, right? So but within each subcategory is maybe not that many unicorns, but there's, running, you have Nike and you have Under Armour and Adidas and all these sorts of companies, right? And new ones that are Coca, right? And On that are coming up that are like doing really well in a short amount of time. So long answer, there's a lot of subcategories within sports, how we thought about it.
Yeah, and I'm tempted to ask you about the stuff that I'm thinking about, but I'm going to save that for the end. So tell me about Shareholder Ventures, and you mentioned that you've been thinking about the idea for a long time. So, like, how and when and why did it start seeping into your consciousness, and then how did it evolve from just being an intruder in your brain to your full-time pursuit?
Fall in love with a problem, not with a solution. I stole that from someone. I forget who, but I think it's good advice. And so
I work that way for what it's worth. I can't. It's not this like it's like you can solve it any number of ways, but like I need to anchor on the problem first for sure. For sure.
You exemplify all of our conversations as you've gotten back into youth sports, and it's I feel that from you, and I think that's 100% the right way to be. Humble, open-minded, willing to explore. It's like a class research project or something when you go in. If you know the conclusion from the start, that's gonna not lead to a great paper. Anyway, problem. There are a lot of problems in the world worth solving. I think entrepreneurship is the best way to do it. One problem that I got really excited about was you have all these baby boomers who are retiring. My parents are at the very older end of the baby boomer generation, but about a lot of folks are in their 60s and 70s now, and they're retiring, and they own a very disproportionate amount of the wealth in the country. Not just cash and stocks, but assets and businesses and real estate and all this. There's a lot of opportunity, I think, around baby boomers retiring and transitioning assets to a younger generation, or selling their business, selling their homes, and all sort of stuff. I think there's a lot of opportunity around that. But what I got excited about, I started seeing stats like 45% of Americans work at small businesses, and the majority of owners of these businesses, like baby boomers, and they don't have transition plans, or their kids don't want to take these businesses over, or can't take it over. Think about it's boring service business, roofing, HVAC, landscaping, plumbing, pool servicing, whatever, right? And so maybe some sexier, non-boring ones, but there's car washes and there's all these. These are not convenience stores or little restaurants or, nail salons where you're buying a job, not really a business. There's all these businesses that are like 1 to 2 million in EBITDA. I realize is sort of the sweet spot where they're too small for private equity, too small for traditional search funds. Definitely not something VCs do or angel investors do. But it's a real business with real enduring value that spits out a lot of cash flow, and the owner is going to retire over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And their kids grew up rich and want to be a tech founder or want to be a a VC or want to be an artist or whatever in some other city, and they don't want to take over the HVAC business in Omaha. And so what happens to these businesses? What happens to all these jobs? And by the way, this is a problem that it's one of the few things that Republicans and Democrats agree on. It's like small business, jobs, Main Street America, really, really important for our country to solve this. And to the government's credit, because I think the government generally gets most things wrong, the Small Business Association has been the SBA has been really successful in playing a role here historically in providing guarantees on debt that banks issue to people who are buying small businesses. So you as an American or green card holder, every American green card holder can go, I think you have to be over 18. Can't do it if you're 6 years old, but every American citizen and green card holder can borrow up to $5 million. $5 million. This doesn't exist in other countries. To buy a business, a profitable existing business at up to 90% leverage, but it's usually more like 75 to 80%. Meaning you buy a business doing $1.5 million in cash flow for like $5 million, you'll get a loan from a bank for $4 million. And the government, through the SBA 7A loan program, will guarantee 75%, $3 million in this example, of that bank's loan. So the banks love doing it because they're like, wait, I get to make a $4 million loan. It's over a 10-year term, sometimes longer, with a good interest rate and origination fees. And 75% of the loan is off my books. I don't have to worry about it. I'll do that deal all day long. Every deal that meets that criteria, I'll do. And the seller's like, great, I want to retire and go buy a boat in Florida and sell this business. And as an acquisition entrepreneur, the name that is most commonly used for people who they are an entrepreneur, but they're doing it through buying a business, not starting it. It's very hard to start a business, by the way, easier to buy one. Not that it's easy, but it's easier. The acquisition entrepreneur or the self-funded searcher, it's different names for it. They get to be the CEO and own a majority of an existing profitable business, oftentimes with very little to none of their own money. And so it's a beautiful win-win-win thing, but there's a lot of friction in the process. And so the first thing I did in my discovery journey is I read this book called Buy Then Build by Walker Deibel, who's now become a friend. We're doing more together, which I can't announce yet. It's like the industry Bible. I recommend to everyone, if you're interested in buying a small business, you have to read Buy Then Build.
You, Jordan, are a published author.
Yeah.
What book did you
Coaching
write?
Up. Q, what a plug. Called Coaching Up. My philosophy for leadership through relationships, building relationships.
Okay. So anyways,
I could talk more about that, but
so you discovered this book, Buy Then Build.
Buy Then Build. Read Buy Then Build. Here's the homework if you're interested. Read Buy Then Build. And then listen to a couple episodes on acquiring minds. My partner, co-founder and COO, Tim Erickson, is interviewed in one of the episodes on acquiring minds. But acquiring minds is a podcast, and they just interview people who bought small business with SBA 7A loans. But if you do those two things and you catch the bug, it's too late for you. You're going to end up buying a business. Then you have to go through the rest of, find a business, learn, get the loan, raise money, blah, 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 do the thing. But those would be the first two steps. I won't give more than that because I think it's enough. And I just want people, if they're interested, do those things and then you'll be on your way.
So you discovered that there was this trend and that the acquiring entrepreneur could get access to bank loans because the SBA is guaranteeing 75% of the bank loan for the bank. What gap did you see and what did Shareholder Ventures step in to do?
If Jason wants to go and buy a profitable roofing business instead of starting the next great youth sports tech company.
I might go buy a chain of skills facilities. There you go. So
there you go. It has to have cash flow because the banks underwrite the cash flow. So it's an existing profitable business. They're usually bought. So again, sort of once 2 million EBITDA, you could buy something a little smaller. We don't recommend it, but you could buy something for 500K, 700K and EBITDA, or what's called seller discretionary earnings, SDE, which is EBITDA plus any add backs, whatever the owner expends to the business they probably shouldn't have. And these things trade for 3 to 5x multiples of 12-month trailing cash flow. So very cheap. Compare that to the S&P 500, which is 22x multiple. This is 3 to 5. So you can buy a thing that's doing $1 million in free cash flow for approximately $4 million. Now, it may not be growing very fast. There may be some ways you can improve it, or maybe it's running very efficiently, but you can go buy one of these. And again, the government through the SBA 7A loan, through a bank will, you have 80% there. You can usually have maybe 5 to 10% in seller financing or seller equity role, but you are required to bring 10% equity, 10% in cash. I think of it like a down payment on a house. You have to bring 10% cash, but herein lies the opportunity. It doesn't have to come from you. It can come from a third party. We are going to be the leading investor putting in the 10% cash. That's, cutting to
And is that cash is invested as equity?
Yeah. We're going to be your partner. We're going to put in the cash for you. So now you don't even need your own cash. You get debt from a bank, cash from us, maybe a little bit of seller financing or seller equity rolling forward from the seller. And you put in like none or very little of your own money. We ask the search the acquisition entrepreneur to put in a little bit of cash, and that's personally meaningful for them. If they have a lot of cash, maybe we want them to put in $50K or $100K. If they have 50 grand, maybe we want them to put in 10K. Just something. They have a little skin in the game. But like, it's not about their cash. That's a really great opportunity for a whole lot of folks. Like, a lot of people don't like working for someone else and being in a, the corporate rat race. It's not for everybody. It wasn't for me. And okay, you could start a company, great, but it's like so hard to do from scratch. And everyone thinks that that's what entrepreneurship is because they watch The Social Network and they read about, Steve Jobs and Elon Musk and Zuckerberg. They're like, that's not what entrepreneurship is. That's the 0.0001%. And by the way, for every one of those, there's a million companies that you and I have seen and invested in or heard about who raised $40 million and then die, and it's a wipeout for everyone. The entrepreneur spent 10 years of their life on it and made no money, right? Even after having success publicly with it. So anyway, it's a lot easier to buy a thing that's already working. And in that example, you're going to own 80% or more of the business. You're going to be the CEO of it. You get a salary on day one. And as long as you don't mess it up, you're going to become a millionaire pretty quickly and be able to start generating really good passive cash flow as you pay down the loan, even if you don't grow the business. And if you can grow it, like all the much better. This is a much safer, easier, highly likely to succeed path, not without risk, versus the corporate rat race or starting something and trying to go from 0 to 1 yourself. For most who are interested or capable of running a business. So, but there's friction. So I uncovered this. So Tim, my partner Tim and I, while I was at Techstars, we were like, okay, cool. Like, let's go and let's navigate this and let's go. And what do you do? How do I learn about business? Let's go look and try to find a business, go buy a business. And so it's really hard. I'll kind of boil it down to the essence. You have to find a business to buy. First, you got to get educated, read the book, listen to the podcast, talk to people. There's 10,000 business brokers in the United States. There's a bunch of these listing sites like Biz, Buy, Sell, or MicroAcquire or whatever, where you can go and look for businesses. Most of them are junk or have already sold or not even available, but are on the site. And so there's this whole search process that's education and then search. That's hard. But then let's even say you find a business, then you got to negotiate a deal. And it's maybe your first time ever buying a business. So you don't know what you don't know. And you got to do diligence. You got to get it under LOI, letter of intent, right? You have agreement with the seller. And you got to do diligence on it. And then you got to get a bank to give you the loan. You got to package it up for a bank, and banks are very peculiar and they're not very innovative, and they like what they like and they want to see what they want to see exactly how they want to see it. And there's forms and things you have to do, and you need to get the tax returns. You need to do a quality of earnings report. You need to do proof of cash, and you need to background check.
I'm doing it right now because we're doing a HELOC for a house.
Yeah.
So it's like a mini version of what you're describing. It's already a pain. I already hate it. And I'm sure it's like a tiny piece of what this entails.
Yeah. And by the way, you need to get life insurance in place. You have to sign a personal guarantee for the debt. If you own a property and you have more than 20% equity in your property, the bank is going to collateralize your property as part of the loan. That scares off a lot of people. You do have to sign personally for the debt. You're all in. You're buying this business and you're all in for the business. But again, you're getting 80% or more of a business for free. That's working.
Okay, so that's the landscape. So
then you gotta wait, Jason, wait. Then you buy it. Whoa, sorry, you can't buy it. You need 10% cash. So what do people do? If you remember these businesses being bought for $3, $4, $5, $6 million bucks, maybe 7, maybe up to 10 at most. We see a deal at 10, 11, 12 million. Sort of that's the upper end. But the range is smaller end would be like $3 million bucks, maybe 2.5. You need 10% or more cash and working capital. So maybe you have 400, 500K in your 401k or your Roth IRA or something. Maybe you have it in savings or your partner does. But even if you do, like you're already taking a lot of risk. You're quitting your job, you're buying this business, you're signing for the debt. You're also going to drain all your life savings or pull out a HELOC out of your house and like to put the cash in. Like it's even more risk. So most people don't do that. They raise the capital. But again, VCs and hedge funds and private equity angel investors, they don't provide capital for this space because these businesses are small. It's a niche area. So people will syndicate it out and they'll go to their buddies, right? And they'll say, hey, Jason, how you doing, man? Remember me from, business school or whatever? Like, you want to throw in 25K in this deal and buy this landscaping company for 3X multiple of cash in like Houston. And you'll be like, I don't invest in landscaping businesses in Houston. Right? So they go like their rich uncle, if they happen to have one. Anyway, it's hard. You got to pull the money together. And then you have this group of maybe 8, 10, 15 people who've each thrown in a small check to get you your 400K. And they're not value add, right? They're like friends, fools, whatever. And they might even be annoying. Hey, Jason, 3 years in, like, how's my landscaping business doing? When am I going to get my money back and whatever? So there's no value add. It's not like you're taking a check from Benchmark or Andreessen Horowitz or Techstars or Y Combinator or something. So anyway, and then you find the deal, you get educated, you find the deal, you get the debt, you negotiate everything, you get the equity, you buy it. Now you got to run a business, and you're on your own running a business. You don't have a board. You're not part of an accelerator class. You're not part of a portfolio with a bunch of other funds. They have, best practices and advice and stuff and conferences and whatever. You're on your own running this business for a deal, and you signed personally for the debt. It's a little scary. So cutting to the chase, Tim went and found a business, did this whole thing and bought it. I went, found a business, bought it. And we were like, oh my God, that's hard. And there's not the support stuff that exists.
What'd you buy?
Base. I bought a nice business. I haven't announced it yet. We'll announce it soon. And so
what's the category, Jordan? Sports tech.
No, it's B2B. I would say it's a events marketing B2B business.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. A category I know very little about, by the way, mind you. But like
it's a bar mitzvah DJ business, isn't it?
That would be a sexy. That you might have to pay more than a 4 or 5X multiple for that. And my partner Tim, I can tell you, goes public, and his episode on Acquiring Minds talks about it. He bought We Rent Copiers, super sexy business. Ready for this? Drum roll. We rent copiers. If you need a copier or fax or printer machine, we rent it to you. We have warehouses across the country, and we rent it to you. The Super Bowl is one of our clients, and so when they spin up the tents to print out a bunch of tickets and whatever, like they don't want to buy all the printers and then get rid of them afterwards. So they rent them from us for it. But yeah, nice little business, niche, profitable, bought a good multiple. It's working. Nice. So anyway, so we just thought there was an opportunity there, but we, to your point, we uncovered it by going through it ourselves. The next thing I did, I joined, and I'm going to stop after this because we can move on. I joined the Center for American Entrepreneurship on their Entrepreneur Council because I wanted to get close. I don't like DC and politics and blah, blah, but I wanted to get close to the SBA. So through that, I met the administrator, the person who runs the SBA under President Biden, Isabel Guzman, and a lot of people involved with the SBA. And I learned, and I love these people who care about small business and how do we do better for America and how do we stimulate innovation and jobs and growth and business transitions, enable people to retire. And everyone's like all excited about it and trying to do stuff in it. And I looked around the room, I was like, where's the entrepreneurs and the VC people who've raised and deployed hundreds of billions of dollars, and why is no one investing in this asset class and at a time when the country needs it? And I was like, I'm going to go do that. And then, the rest was with Tim and trying to figure out, our approach and all that sort of stuff. But that's where the idea came from and our initial step.
So, would you consider Shareholder Ventures a venture capital firm? What do you call it? The asset class?
It's a HoldCo, holding company, structurally. We have 85 investors in the holding company who are high net worth individuals, family office people, founders, or just friends of mine. And I knew all of them before, or Tim and I knew all of them before. And so we just invited people to invest, and we said, no one can invest more than $100,000 because we want to have a big group of a lot of small checks. And we want to have value add from the community. And we have 85 investors, and I structure it as a HoldCo because a few reasons. One, we could have done it as a fund, and could have done it as a fund, but I went through as a HoldCo first because I'm a huge Buffett Munger fan, and I wanted to try my hand at, being a very poor man's version of that. I like playing long-term games with long-term oriented people who I like and admire. And the HoldCo structure enables you to do that. And I was very explicitly told as investors, I say, I intend to do this for like the rest of my life. That's my intent. It won't happen, but it's my intent going in. And it's a very different approach than coach up and draft, where it's like, I'm going to build this tech thing. I need to raise money to hire engineers. And as passionate as I was about the thing, in particular coach up, it was always, once you take other people's money, in particular VCs, and you're on the VC speed train, like you got to sell the business when you take it public and you do it within 5, 10 years, 12 years or whatever, right? Like that's, what you're doing. This is not, don't get emotional about how you're changing the world forever. Like, no, it's a project with, amplified by venture dollars. And your goal is to move super, super fast and burn a lot of money and grow, and then sell it or take it public, right? Like quickly, because they need to return their funds, and their funds are 10-year cycle, maybe an option to extend it to 2 years. And that's how it's structured. And you got to know what game you're playing. I don't want to do that with this. I'm going to build a profitable business to be the leading investor in the space that's going to do a lot of good for America, jobs, cash flow. We're backing people who intend to buy it. If you're going to go buy that roofing business, Jason, you're not quitting your job and going buy it because you want to like flip it in 3 years. You want to like own a business and be an important person in your small town and employ people and do it for maybe a long time, maybe hand it off to your kids. You might be in that thing for 30, 40, 50 years. And so we need to structurally and emotionally be aligned with you as your investor and minority partner to be a long-term partner. And funds are not set up for that. There's also specific tax and, capital allocation and recycling advantages to being a HoldCo. And I also wanted to do more than just be an investor, because I want you to take my check instead of all the other competitors who are going to pop up around us, and some already have, because we're going to provide more than just a check. We're going to have the industry leading summit, and we're going to have peer CEO groups, and we're going to do your accounting and finance back office for you. And we're going to help you with your website, your SEO, and your SEM. And we're going to help you hire outsourced talent in Latin America to save costs, that, cut operating budget, and, all that stuff.
Do you use Telescoped for that?
I'm an investor in Telescope, a big fan of Telescope. Usually these companies are not hiring engineers.
They just came on the pod, Telescope.
Huh?
Not published yet. Anyways, I'm a small investor too.
Very cool.
Okay.
It's not engineers, but it's more like,
Like call
data,
center?
marketing folks, customer support. Yeah, stuff like that, which
Cool.
Latin America is very well suited for. Anyway, so I wanted to do these things, and like funds aren't well set up to have portfolio services that are like real and profitable, and that sort of thing. So for all those reasons, we decided to do it as a HoldCo.
Now, is it an evergreen structure of sorts? I mean, can investors invest in the HoldCo over time, and also can they liquidate their position in the HoldCo over time, or how does that work since it's not a closed-end fund?
What I told, here's my pitch to investors. You can invest, but not more than $100,000. I promised to never send you a dividend. Pitch gets better. Because it causes double taxation. Famously, Berkshire sent one dividend in 1967, and Buffett said he must have been on the toilet when they did it. And they didn't send another dividend. They have like $350 billion in cash right now, and he won't send a dividend, right? Because the corporation pays tax, and then if they send it to you as an investor, then you have to pay personal tax. And so we'll just keep it at the corporate level and recycle it. And, hopefully you're investing in a HoldCo. You trust that the team can do better with the money than you can, or at least as well without the negative tax implications of sending you the money. So, but I did say every 5 years we'll open up a window, we'll have the business appraised, and if you want to get out, we'll offer to buy you out off the balance sheet at fair market value price of your position. But every 5 years, I don't want to don't bother me every 1 or 2 years. I'm busy trying to make you money, so just leave me alone. Every 5 years, I'll do it. And so that's what I told them. And also, you're not allowed to put in a big check, because I don't want you to be like, hey man, where's my $1 million? I kind of need to get it out.
When you back a company, or backup acquisition, I guess. Technically, what percentage of that cash is coming from the HoldCo versus an SPV or another source?
So initially, because I didn't want to raise so much money in the HoldCo to take a lot of dilution and a low valuation early on. Initially, I said, okay, every time we do one of these minority investments, we're going to do it as an SPV, special purpose vehicle. And every time we do that, you as an investor, one of our 85 investors, will have first priority access to participate in that deal. And those will be very cash flowing, all dividends. And we think we think
And you can
returns
put
are
more money, and they won't
you
be
put,
it won't be the same
you will
maximum that there is. Yeah.
by being a HoldCo investor, you're in the club, and I'm not going
That's
to
like your
charge
ante to get access to the
but it's like
to the individual investment.
exactly. But I didn't like the idea. Like I could have structured. I said, okay, you got to pay. Everyone pays 10 grand a fee a year, 15 grand a year to have access to this thing and to provide, cash for our overhead, so we can hire analysts and so on, so we can source deals and present them and manage them and send you do the tax and send you the K1s and all that sort of stuff. I mean, everyone pays an annual fee for that, and you have the right to participate in the deals. I have a friend who's running a business that's structured under that model for private credit, and he's done very well with it. But I didn't love that model. I don't like charging people for access, like a social club or something. No, I will allow you to invest, but you're gonna have a piece of the machine. You're gonna have a piece of the next Y Combinator. You're gonna have a piece of the next BlackRock, and you can participate in the deals that we do. But even if you don't participate in the deals we do, your investment in the machine itself is going to be a very good long-term compounded investment for you. I felt better philosophically about aligning with people versus charging them, especially since I know all these people and I care about them and it's their personal money and all that stuff. So I decided to do it that way.
So since you're such a marketplace guy at the core, I don't know if you identify that way, but you must be the marketplace guy after Coach Up. But
I'm a tattoo here. You can't see it as a marketplace guy.
But have you thought about the potential what do you call them? Acquiring entrepreneurs? Is that what you call them?
Acquisition entrepreneurs.
Yeah. So acquisition entrepreneurs, and then the boomers looking to sell. Like, is there a marketplace opportunity there? And could you do you tend to find the acquisition entrepreneur that already knows what kind of business they want to buy, or do you find one that then runs a process? And where do you invest more in building relationships on one side or the other, or is it both equally?
Love the question. I don't know what the future will hold for us, but I will say, when you're starting something new, you want to specialize and focus and be really, really good at the thing. And so, there's 10,000 business brokers in the US. Like, could we have a business brokerage business or start one? Yeah. There are a bunch of marketplaces for listing your company you want to sell and other people to find it. Like BizBuySell is the most common example. There are many. There are communities like Search Funder. There's communities for people who are searching. There's community and chat. There are loan brokers who exist just to connect, people who are buying a business with an SBA 7A loan with banks that will give them the loan and they take their fee, like a 1% fee on that. That's a nice little loan brokerage business. There's some people making $1 million plus per year just off loan brokerage, often with misaligned incentives, i.e. whoever will give them the biggest fee, not the best loan. Right. Anyway, what we found was the biggest pain point that we were most uniquely with our background and skill set to solve is when you have a business under LOI or you're about to have a business, you found it, you're talking to banks, maybe you have a loan, maybe you don't have a loan lined up, but like you're close, you're at the goal line. Like that's when we can help you the most. And in particular, what people need is cash. So
right when they're at the point where they're like trying to find the hat that they're going to go pass around, you step in and say, you know what, we can save you that whole headache. Just push this button, and you not only get the capital, but you get this rich layer of services, expertise, network, et cetera.
Yeah, not just the headache. Because when you're going to buy that HVAC business, you're not the only person trying to buy it if it's a decent business worth buying. And you're competing with other people that maybe already have the money personally, or they've already raised it. And if you don't, like, you're not getting the deal. And now you got to spend another year finding another deal, right? So not having the cash, not being able to show that you have the cash, ability to raise the cash. So when Shareholder Ventures commits to you, we always close. Our word is our bond. We're like, building the Berkshire Hathaway brand. Right? We say we're going to do something, we always do it, take it to the grave. And so you'll be able to close, and we hope to build a brand that the sellers know you're going to close, and that the business that, remember, sellers have put their life into this business. They maybe done it for 30 years or 10 years or whatever, right? And they care about the people who are working in small businesses. They know everyone's name. They know everyone's kids' names. And so they care about what happens afterwards. Oftentimes they even keep a little equity in the business, roll forward a small piece. They don't just want to get the top price. They want to sell to an individual, not private equity, which we are enabling and unlocking. Like someone, a local entrepreneur is going to step in and run the business. Sellers like that a lot more than selling to private equity that's going to load it with debt and flip it or ruin it. So that's a big part of it. But this is the best of both worlds because you're selling it to an individual, but you have the backing of an institutional capital that has experience, knowledge, resources, support. We're going to do the back office, the accounting, the finance, and so on to ensure that it's not messed up or it's not as easy to mess it up. But we're minority owner, not majority. You're still selling to an individual just backed by us. So it's sort of a great marriage from a seller perspective. So we think we can help you get a deal you otherwise wouldn't because we give you a one-stop shop for the cash. We help you get a better deal on your interest rate because we have relationships with all the banks because we do a volume of deals. We help you negotiate the LOIs, see around the corners, figure out how much working capital you need, financial projections, the whole thing. We make you a better buyer in the eyes of the seller. We give you a better chance of succeeding, even if it's the same amount of money that your friends would have given you. With the back office support, networking, all this sort of stuff. So yeah, but like the core need is the cash. Like if you compare it to buying a house, there's so many things. You could build the next Zillow or Redfin or whatever, right? As a marketplace, or you could be a lender or broker or whatever. But what stops most people from buying a house is like the down payment. They don't have a down payment. And so there's an element of that here too. Like it's the 10% cash requirement that is often the hardest part, and everything else we do around that is to, help and enable access and all this sort of stuff. But it's being the best investor of the 10% cash is what we're trying to do out the gates.
So where do the search funds or the search fund of funds fit relative to shareholder ventures?
Jason, your questions. I mean, for you sports guy, out of your element.
I was looking at search funds back when I was in getting my MBA from 2003 to 2005. I love the idea of it. I think what scared me away was the skill set that you actually needed to run one of these businesses. Like even back then, I knew that I was not operational.
By the way, I don't think I'd be good at it either. My partner, Tim, is amazing at it. He's like operational machine. I call him Form Daddy because like anytime we need he just creates these forms in Airtable and different like spreadsheets and forms and things and models stuff out. I'm like,
Tim might be able to help me get my prototype going for my youth sports.
Tim can do anything. You're a great partner. Oh my God. And we work so well together. I'm blessed. He enables me to schmooze with you. And he's like probably doing like real work right now, It's great. And he's like happy with that. And I'm happy. Like we're both happy.
So
search funds. Okay. Traditional search funds or search funds have been very successful over the last, when they get popular, like 25 years ago, starts to get really popular. They've been driving like
Wick
25
Grauspec's dad invented the search fund.
Dad at HBS, and then he moved to Stanford. He took the model from HBS to Stanford. He invented
Irv
Grauspec. And that's where the money came from for the Celtics, or part of the Celtics, because there's an ownership group there. And I know Wick, and I don't know Irv. But yes,
I don't know either one, but I know of Irv from reading about search funds back in 2003 to 2000.
Wick once, I won't share it, but Wick once told me a story about how he bought the Celtics. Like, oh my God, from being a Boston sports fan growing up, and like, it was such a cool story. And what a great outcome selling it. Really sad about Tatum's Achilles injury yesterday. That would be a tangent if we talked about it though. So as pros and cons, if you want to do a search fund, first of all, you have to be probably an elite MBA type, Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, Booth, whatever, Kellogg, to even have the opportunity to do it. You then go to one of these traditional search funds and you say, I'm going to go spend 1 to 2 years of my life looking for a business to buy. And they say, great, here's our model and blah, blah, blah. And they're going to give you a salary, like, I don't know, 150, 200K salary, maybe a little more, probably not, enough that you can live on. Well, you go and you search, and that's nice. I mean, we don't do that. So one pro is you get paid a salary to go and look for business, which you may or may not buy.
You guys probably aren't even in the picture yet at that point, right?
Well, different category. First of all, categories. this is for businesses that traditional search funds compete directly with private equity.
Hmm.
And increasingly with like later stage VC funds that are starting to do some of these deals and moving down a little bit. So 3 million, call it plus in EBITDA. We don't even play there. We're 1 to 2 million EBITDA. We don't compete with traditional search funds at all, ever. So one of the pros you get as a searcher, traditional searcher, you get a salary for a year or two. Whereas us, you keep your job and you're doing this on the side. Two is you're able to buy a bigger business, buy a 3 million to 7, 8, maybe even 10 million EBITDA business instead of a 1 to 2 million. So you're buying a bigger business. There's benefits there. Downside, you're going to own 15 to 25% of it. Whereas in our model, you're going to own 80 to 85% of it. So you're not really the owner. You're a minority partner. And you have a vesting schedule, and whether you own 10 or 15 or 20 or 25% depends on your performance, the performance of the business, and how much the board feels about you. You have a board, you report to the board. It's a job. You're getting paid by a group of investors to go and look for a business to buy for them. And you're going to be the operating manager for them. And they're going to set your salary and they're going to set your equity and they're going to fire you if you don't do a good job. And like, it's a job. Like, yeah, cool. If you want to have a job, it's a good job. If you can get it, it's hard to get it, but it's just a totally different thing. Like here, you're buying a business, you're running the business, you own the business, it's your business, and we're giving you a little bit of cash and support to enable your success, but you're buying a smaller business and it's your business. It's just night and day, totally different thing, but we get the question a lot because it's self-funded search versus traditional search, and it's just different. But yeah. By the way, that thing's competitive. You're competing with all the other traditional search funds and private equity funds and everyone who's buying these larger businesses, businesses that maybe often could go public or whatever.
So it sounds like the operating budget will largely come from the HoldCo investment. How long does that give you? And then is the hope that that's the last capital you would take? And if so, how do you replenish the coffers? And if not, what happens when you need to go and fundraise again?
Your questions. I mean, these is like the best questions.
I like to learn. And that's why I do this show. Like,
You
I don't
could,
care if
yeah.
anyone listens to it. I just like to learn. Yeah. And this is an area I wanted to understand better. So here we are. And I want to
Let's
catch up with
talk
you, Jordan.
about cash. Let's talk about cash. Let's get to it. Okay, so first of all, mind shift. You, whoever's listening, or you, Jason, are buying an existing profitable business. Profitable business. It's a foreign concept. You're an entrepreneur who's buying a profitable business, not starting something that's unprofitable. So the bank won't give you a loan unless there's at least 1.3x debt service coverage ratio, DSCR, debt service coverage ratio. Meaning, if the business is producing $1 million a year in cash flow, not on a forward-looking 5-year fancy projection where you add some zeros like in venture, but like what it's done over, and they won't even take last year. They'll average over the last 3 years tax returns. They'll take the average cash flow. That's your cash flow. Okay, it's not a bullshit cash flow. So let's say it's done average $1 million in free cash flow, like actual owner earnings, like what you could pull out of the business and put in your bank account. Okay, over the last 3 years, real earnings, not EBITDA, because that can be fib. Okay, that's the number the bank's using. If that business makes $1 million a year, the bank wants to. Let's say the business makes 1.3 million a year. Simple example. The bank will not give you a loan where the principal and interest payments on an annual basis are not more than $1 million, right? 1.3 to $1 million. They want a 30% buffer, a margin of safety, to use a Buffettism, right? Between the cash that the business is producing versus the debt service payments on the loan. They want to ensure, with all the business expenses, they want to ensure that there's a buffer. So from a cash perspective, the cash we're putting in, like that's going to the seller, right? So the seller at close, let's say it's a $5 million purchase price, 4 million of that 5 million is coming from the bank debt. $500,000 is coming from us. We're putting 10% of the purchase price. And then maybe the rest is some seller financing or seller equity role where they're basically like, that's cool, Jason, you can give me 90%, 95% today. You give me the rest over time. Maybe I'll keep 5% ownership, whatever. I'm getting my 90%. I'm going to go to Florida and buy my boat. You can give me the rest later over time, and it aligns us. So there's some of that. Okay. So, but now you own the business, and the bank and us and you will want to ensure there's enough working capital, cash in your bank account after you close. You don't want to have just $1 in there after you close, that you can meet your obligations for the first couple of months with some buffer. And so we'll often encourage, even though you only need 10%, take 12 or 15% cash take a little more than you need. So you have a little bit of cash and you close. But again, the business is profitable. The first month, you should be making money. Maybe there's some seasonal element to it. If so, we want to make sure you have enough working capital to get through. But the cash flow from the business should pay off the loan, all of your expenses, including the new loan on the business, and produce enough margin, including your CEO's salary that you take on day one. You get a salary on day one once you close, and with a margin of safety built in. The salary, we will fix it in our term sheet. The salary is usually around 10% of the 12-month trailing cash flow. So the business was doing $1.5 million in free cash flow less. We'll be like, okay, Jason, your salary is going to be 100,000. Little negotiation variation, but it's like, call it 100 to 200K salaries. Like hey, it's nothing to sneeze at. It's a real salary, but it's not like a huge salary. It's not like a tiny salary. It's like you should be able to live off that. And we tell the acquisition entrepreneur, we're all about is alignment. We're putting in all the cash. So we're risking our cash. We're putting a little bit of time, support, and resources. You are bringing the deal because you found it. You're bringing the debt because you're signing for it, even if we help you get a better interest rate. And you're bringing the sweat because you're going to run it. So you bring the deal, the debt, and the sweat. We put in the cash and the support. We're partners. You're going to own like 81 plus. We're going to own never more than 19%. We don't want to own more than 20% of the business. We have to sign for the loan if we do. So we always stay under 90%, under 20. But that's how it works. And we tell the searcher, and I'll stop here. If you want to make more than your salary, which we strongly encourage and would love for you to do, unlike a venture model or a hired CEO thing where you ask for a raise and we have an executive committee and we're like, does Jason deserve a raise or not? And whatever politics goes like that. We're like, no, there's never going to be a raise. It's your business. You own 81% of it or 85% of it. Just send a dividend. The business makes money. Mind shift. You now own a profitable business. So just send a dividend. So if the business can support a dividend, great. Send a dividend. You're going to get 80%. We're going to get 20%. Great. We want you to make $1 million a year. Just send a dividend. Usually they can't do that the first couple of years. And 100% of the cash comes back to us until we pulled our cash out. So we risk our cash. We get our cash out. It's 1x, participating, get it out. But as soon as we get out, then, it's 80-20 split or whatever the split is, 85-15, your way. So we expect our searchers, a couple of years in to be getting into the dividend and, making a lot more than their salary. And once they pay off that loan, now they're going to start pulling off, $750K, $1 million, $1.5 million in dividends per year off a business that they put no money into buying, like plus their salary.
And is any of that seeing its way back into the HoldCo?
Yeah. So in every SPV we do, and again, sort of the big vision, like we're doing SPVs to get going because that way we don't have to over-raise on the HoldCo, and we want to provide access to our investors who put money into the HoldCo for these deals. And so in every deal we do, there's a mix between HoldCo cash and SPV cash. We charge 20% carry as a HoldCo for our investors. And so, but that's sort of the breakdown. But from a searcher perspective, the cash is coming from us, whether it's from our HoldCo or our investors. And maybe the mix is slightly different every deal we do, or be a debt off our balance sheet. However, we're putting the cash in. It's one entry for them. They're just dealing with us. They never deal with our investors.
But with a closed-end fund, it's like, you get 3-4 years in, and then you're raising the next fund, and then that way you get like the trailing fees from the current fund as the new fees from the next fund kick in, and then that's what gives you the budget to run the firm, right?
Yeah.
What gives you the budget to run the firm in perpetuity with the HoldCo model? That was the route. You answered a different question. Very interesting question, but not the question I asked initially. Yeah.
I tend to do that, and I apologize to you and to America and whoever's listening. Great question. I don't like fees. I don't like this 2 and 20 fund thing. I don't like the misaligned incentives of fund managers versus LPs. It gives me the ick, to use a Gen Z term. It's not aligned. You see GPs of funds getting very rich at the expense of their investors, and I don't like it. So I don't want to do that. So mind shift, our HoldCo is profitable. We have bought and we're buying more profitable businesses at the HoldCo. So my overhead at the HoldCo, we're profitable. And so I don't need fees for my funds to cover my salary, Tim's salary, Andrew's salary.
Because the HoldCo is essentially operating like an acquiring entrepreneur, an acquisition entrepreneur.
We have bought businesses, Tim and I. We've assigned them to the HoldCo. before we went and raised money. And we're buying more businesses at the HoldCo, and we're buying profitable business at the HoldCo. And so we're profitable at the HoldCo, and we'll continue to build or buy more businesses. I don't want to buy at our HoldCo roofing HVAC businesses. We're investing in these deals. What I want to own, whether we build it or buy it, and we're doing both, like we're building our own in-house accounting and finance business called SMB Edge. And we're buying businesses that do like website and SEO optimization and, things like that. We want to be able to say, Jason, here's your check, 10% for the business, and look at all the suite of services that we have that we're going to offer you to make you more successful. Like we can do your website and your SEO and your accounting and your finance, blah, blah, blah. We charge a small fee for that, market or even below market fee, but we do a really good job. And it's all that we do. We focus on delivering that value. And so, that's important to us that we do that. And we offer those services to external customers too, that we're not investors in. But that's how I want to cover my overhead. I don't want to invest in my overhead.
So the businesses you buy, though, to be clear, are businesses you think will have built-in client bases in the portfolio.
Yeah. Strategic. We're trying to be strategic.
And it's the portfolio's choice if they use these services.
In our term sheet, we do not give you a choice. You are going to use SMB Edge, our in-house team, for your accounting and finance. You're going to do it. And that's so that we ensure it's done correctly. That's so that we can promise our investors that their taxes and K-1s is going to be handled correctly. That's so that we can look you in the eye and tell you that we're going to help you see working capital issues before they happen, because we don't want you to lose your house and go bankrupt in this deal. And we don't want to lose our cash. We're partners and we're aligned. So we do that, and we charge you a monthly fee for that, which is going to be less than you would pay to some other accounting and finance firm for the same service, but enables a small, I think we make like $1,000, $1,500 a month profit on it. But it's something. We do that in-house, and we're fully staffing that in-house. But it's a profit center for us, but it's really so that we can ensure it's done correctly and that all of our investments are all sort of speaking the same language, and we're able to look at all of their numbers on a monthly basis and do the closes and jump in and help if needed. We're going to give you the option, if you'd like to use us for your website and your SEO and your SEM needs, of course you do it. We have a nice service to offer. For your hosting, we're not going to buy and compete with AWS or Google, but we're going to get a discount that we're going to offer from AWS for you because of our scale that you couldn't get on your own. Same thing that Techstars does.
So how many businesses do you expect are going to be owned by the HoldCo in 5 years?
1 million. No. Our North Star is by 2040, 15 years. I think we could do over 1,000 deals.
So do you distinguish between the deals that you're doing and the businesses that the HoldCo owns?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, the HoldCo, what we're going to buy and own, well, we will own.
I'm just trying to picture how fat the HoldCo is going to become relative to the, like, is the deal making the priority, or is the HoldCo the priority, or is it 50-50?
I don't like to talk about forward-looking financials, and don't stick it to me if I exceed or underperform. But we have a pretty good view into what this year will sort of shaping up to look like. And I think at our HoldCo we'll at least 2.5 and maybe 3 million in EBITDA this year from a standing start by the end of the year at a run rate. And that will be across 5 to 6 businesses that we've either bought or started in-house at our HoldCo.
And the ones that are assigned to the HoldCo, do they get run similarly to the ones that you invest in, or are they treated differently?
Well, we don't want to treat them differently. Tim and I are not running them. So each business has to have its own GM or CEO.
Is it a GM or is it a CEO?
Great question. We have one who calls himself a GM. If he wanted to call himself CEO, he could. We have another one who's a CEO. We have 2 under LOI right now, so I can't talk about it. But
do they have separate books, or are they Shareholder Ventures employees?
They're an employee of the company, and the company, I want to visualize it for you, but HoldCo SHV up here, my head, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 going across that report up and in. So all the cash. The nice thing about a HoldCo is you can pull cash out of up and over, and you can mix the cash in. So if one is creating a loss, none of them better create a loss. But if they did, that loss would offset a gain for another one. We can pull cash out of one and move it to the other one. So HoldCo allows the fungibility of cash among the portfolios. But yeah, so like if you work at We Rent Copiers, for instance, which is in the HoldCo and we own, you're an employee. I think we have 19 employees at We Rent Copiers right now. You're an employee of We Rent Copiers. You get a W-2 or a 1099 or whatever it is from We Rent Copiers. But it's 100% owned by, shareholder ventures.
I mean, I have another call in 4 minutes, so we've got to move to wrap this. But I mean, gosh, I could have kept going. But one question, I just had a question. I don't want to lose it. Do you care more about the founder or about the business slash the founder, the business, or the market?
We underwrite the business and the acquisition entrepreneur who's coming in together. Like maybe Jason would be really good buying this plumbing business, but he'd be really bad buying whatever roofing business because the roofing business is far away and he doesn't live there and he wants to be absentee, or because he grew up in a plumbing business, he knows everything about plumbing, but he doesn't know anything about roofing. Maybe we could get around it, maybe we couldn't. So we're backing both, and we're backing them together, right? Because it's this existing business, but the owner, who's often the CEO, usually, not always, but often, is leaving. So this new person's coming in. And so you're looking at the new person coming in with the history of the existing business. The market, we care less about of the three. We care about it, but if I had to choose, I'd go less because we are not underwriting future growth. Like we're actually okay. We generally assume like 5% annual growth-ish, sometimes less. And we can do really, really well. We can generate a 35, 40% IRR off a business that's effectively flat because we're buying the cash flow so cheap. What we want to make sure we do, and this comes again from, Buffett and Munger, is we want to ensure that we're not investing in a business and we go out of business. We want to, like, rule number one, they say never lose money. And rule number 2 through 4 are also rule number 1. Like, remember rule number 1, don't lose money. And so we are scared of an industry that has cyclical decline issues, that maybe because of AI or something else is going to stop being a profitable business. It was for the last 20 years, all of a sudden it's not.
But you would never do like a YC call for startups except for these kinds of businesses.
Yeah, we put out we put out, I'm launching the website soon and get it out publicly. Like we like CPG, restaurants, retail, construction, anything with heavy manufacturing inventory risk. We're scared of that stuff. Like that is easier to mess up. It's harder to do well. Like we'll generally not do that. We never want to say never, but we're pretty much not going to invest in those businesses. Service businesses, business with recurring revenue, like boring service businesses, those are more straight down the narrow, easier to underwrite, easier, harder to mess up for the acquisition entrepreneur coming in.
Well, there's a lot we didn't talk about, but this is awesome. There's a lot here. I'm definitely inspired by what you're working on. It's almost a blessing that we didn't have time to talk about my idea, because I know that you have so much PTSD about youth sports that you're just going to shit all over it anyways.
We didn't have time to get into it. Oh man.
I dodged a bullet. No, I dodged a bullet. I don't want the feedback. I'm doing it. I don't care what you.
Can I get 30 seconds? Come on, give me the 30-second spiel. High level elevator pitch.
Yeah. Well, I don't really have that. Well, basically, in that sweet spot of athletes who, it's not sport as daycare, but they're not yet, they don't have a bunch of handlers around, but they're serious, aspiring young athletes, call it 12 to 15, right? Their parents are dragging them all over the universe, paying a lot of money, burning a lot of miles on their cars, making a bunch of sacrifice, more or less unemployable because it gets in the way of their work, everything, right?
I'm with you.
Yeah. And there's so much that can be done at home, right? And like, you don't even need that much gear. You can do so much at home, and like small habits compound over time, right? And if you have a kid that's anything like mine, you take them out to all these different things and their tail's wagging, they love it, they're dialed in. Like the feedback you get is like, your kid is dialed in, he loves it, he's so passionate about the sport. And then at home, what's he passionate about? He's passionate about video games, he's passionate about fantasy sports, right? And so it's like, even if he's doing the stuff that you drag him out to do at home, it's like, the spark is gone, right? And so it's like, how do you make it fun, right? And so So part of it is like, how do you make it fun and tap into that fantasy sports or video game mindset at home? Part of it is like teeing up, like, what should you do over time and what are your goals and how can we help you get there? Part of it is like, how are you doing? Like, how are you doing against yourself? How are you doing against other kids your age, your ability level? Maybe there's some accountability wrapped in if it's like, you posting and your teammates all posting and your coach, commenting or giving you crap if you don't stay on top of it. And then if you're submitting with video to like get credit or whatever, right? Then it trains the model so that you can use computer vision to actually help you make improvements over time. So there you go. That's the pitch.
I got to hear more about this.
I gotta go. I'm 1 minute late. I gotta run. Yeah, but
drop that.
You can't even crap on it. I gotta go. But Jordan, last words, parting words for guests or listeners. Anything I didn't ask that you wish I did, or any parting words, any homework for listeners, whatever, however you want to bring it home.
If you're an entrepreneur, or you think of yourself as an entrepreneur, but haven't yet had the opportunity to do it, which I say you're an entrepreneur, I hereby declare you're an entrepreneur. I encourage you, selfishly motivated slightly, but I encourage you to think about yourself and about entrepreneurship, not just in the exercise of building something from scratch, going 0 to 1, but in buying something that's already working, it's already profitable, and growing it from there, buying and then building from there. Resources, again, as a reminder, read the book, Buy, Then Build, listen to some episodes on Acquiring Minds. There's an accelerator called Acquisition Lab that it's like 12 grand to go through it. You learn so much. So there's resources out there. Go on Biz Buy Sell, start looking at businesses, and this is a much easier, much more likely to succeed path for like the vast, like 98% of entrepreneurs. And there's never been a better time because all these boomers are retiring and AI is making things easier. And you don't even need to have that much of your own money to do it. And the government wants you to do it and is going to back up 75% of a loan for you to do it. This is like a historical opportunity to go and buy a profitable business and become a CEO and an owner and to generate cash flow from your business beyond your salary and have a really nice lifestyle. And I think more people should think about doing this. And so I encourage you don't have to do anything outside of just look into it. See if it appeals to you. That's my pitch.
Love it. Yeah, this was awesome, Jordan. Sorry to cut this short, but actually long, but we could have kept going. But yeah, I'm going to follow up with you offline to talk more about this and also to talk about the esports stuff.
I look forward to hearing more.
Yeah, it's super nice to catch up with you too. It's been too long.
Jason, thanks, man. Appreciate it. It was a lot of fun. Great questions.
Thank you for tuning in to The Next. If you enjoyed it, you can subscribe from your favorite podcast player. In addition to the podcast, which typically publishes weekly, there's also a weekly newsletter on Substack at thenextnext.substack.com. That's essentially for weekly accountability of the ground I'm covering, areas I'm tackling next, and where I could use some help as well. And it's a great area to foster discussion and dialogue around the topics that we cover on the show. Thanks for tuning in. See you next week.